And hello everybody, welcome back to the channel. Now, much of the conversation today has been with regard to the BBC. Of course, firstly, they were exposed for essentially doctoring Donald Trump's video clips, and basically trying to fabricate him inciting violence back in 2021. It's gone down like a lead balloon and everyone is absolutely furious. Now, after that earlier on today as well, they were also exposed by the Telegraph for pushing Hamas lies and chose to minimize Israel suffering. Yes, they've been going down that as well, lying about the whole ordeal, what has gone on in the Middle East, siding with Hamas and not, again, covering the story fairly and from a balanced perspective. We can see what their narrative is. Now, the Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, of course, has had his say with regard to the BBC, and it probably wouldn't shock you at all. We're also going to be going over a lot more reaction. As stated, this has dominated the headlines today. But please do hit the like button and hit the subscribe button for more. And if you haven't already followed my Instagram, make sure you do. It's DanPWD. You've seen the state of this country. Now wear the message. Wankir, Stuck Farmer, Liber. Shop the full collection by going down into the link in the description or heading over to BritishDan.com. As you can see, firstly, MPs are set to hold an urgent BBC bias meeting after the broadcaster doctored Donald Trump's speech. Extremely worrying. As stated, MPs will meet tomorrow to discuss bias in the BBC after extremely worrying allegations were made about the broadcaster's coverage of Donald Trump and Israel's war in Gaza. Dame Caroline Dinenage, who chairs the Culture, Media and Sports Committee, confirmed the group will address the implications of recent revelations which highlighted that the BBC has misled viewers in a panorama program about Mr. Trump and chose to minimize Israeli suffering in a Gaza documentary. Dame Caroline said, at a time when trust in both politics and mainstream media is so low, our state broadcaster has had an additional responsibility to ensure that it reports contentious and potentially inflammatory issues with a straight bat. These allegations are extremely worrying and come at a critical time for the BBC. The DCMS committee will meet tomorrow and will no doubt discuss the implications of this. Tory leader Kemi Badenoch has already called on BBC chief Tim Davie to sack staff who misled viewers by editing Mr. Trump's speech. Now, whilst that does seem like a fairly normal reaction, Keir Starmer has full confidence in BBC chief despite the broadcaster doctoring Donald Trump's speech. The Prime Minister also believes it's crucial that the BBC upholds higher standards of impartiality, an official number 10 spokesperson said. Keir Starmer has full confidence in BBC's Director General despite broadcaster doctoring Donald Trump's January 6th speech to make it appear that the US President was encouraging his supporters to riot in the Capitol. The Prime Minister's official spokesman was today pressured to directly address growing concerns after the Telegraph released extracts of a dossier on BBC bias. The BBC was found to have completely misled viewers by showing the 47th president telling his supporters he was going to walk to the Capitol with them to fight like hell against his 2020 defeat. The footage, which was used in a panorama documentary released just weeks before the 2024 US presidential election, merged parts of Mr. Trump's speech that had been filmed almost an hour apart. And as you can see, no surprise there, but Keir Starmer has full confidence in BBC chief because they're all friends, and he knows that the BBC are his propaganda arm. So of course he's going to have full confidence. Although he did say that he had full confidence in Mandelson, Angela Rayner, and then look what happened to them just a few days after. Yeah, interesting to see, but again, no surprises from Keir Starmer and his official spokesperson saying that they have full confidence in the BBC. Of course they do. Suella Braverman was, of course, on GB News, and she said it's a shameful day for the BBC. She shares the same outrage as we all do, and we're also going to be getting to this Islamist here who defends the BBC. Yeah, of course she is. Of course she is. Let's have a watch of this.
It's fair to point out that the Labour government, astonishingly, did cut foreign aid more than Conservatives. But I want to move on to, you mentioned that word betrayal. Let's talk about the BBC. An astonishing story broke in the show yesterday afternoon. An independent external advisor, Michael Prescott, blew the whistle on editorial bias. Clear, provable, blatant, unavoidable. bias from the BBC, doctoring a Donald Trump documentary, Panorama, splicing together footage to create an entirely false picture of what actually happened. And now it gets worse. Today we found out the BBC, the quotes, pushed Hamas lies around the world by taking Hamas data, statistics and fake news as fact, constantly painting Israel as the aggressor and minimising any Israeli suffering. It's been a dark time for the BBC, and you've been very outspoken on this, Suella Braverman.
Well, I think the case is now compelling that we need to scrap the licence fee. Those of us have been, many of us, including many of us here on GB News, have been advocating for that for years. But I just think this is indefensible now. Actively doctoring and manipulating the truth is the antithesis of what the state broadcaster should be standing for, and at odds with whatever, everything that respectable journalism represents in this country. How can we have any confidence or faith in what the BBC puts out after this episode? It's a shameful day for the BBC. I think Tim Davie really needs to consider his position, but the licence fee and the whole structure of the BBC is not fit for purpose. And it's the latest in a long litany of failures. They refused to describe Hamas as terrorists. They collaborated with agents or those linked to Hamas to produce a documentary. They've minimised some of the suffering in Israel, and they've amplified and distorted some of the issues relating to Gaza. They've been partisan, misleading, and today I'm thinking, I believe really is a day of shame for the BBC.
So two things. Are you saying that Ofcom should investigate, and should Tim Davie go?
Tim Davie needs to go. I just don't see how he can stay in post after not just this misrepresentation, but also the other scandals relating to the BBC, whether it's Hugh Edwards or other very highly paid people at the BBC who have been really shown to have fallen short of BBC's standards of propriety. And I think there needs to be a full-blown investigation into anti-Semitism and also whether the BBC's been adhering to editorial guidelines.
And the answer to that is no. But again, as you've seen here, Prime Minister Keir Starmer has full confidence in the BBC chief, despite that. You know, that's where he sort of lies. That's where his standpoint lies. Now, you've got this Islamist here, of course, as she defends the BBC. Of course she does.
A lot of critics today of the BBC. Boris Johnson saying this is a total disgrace. Donald Trump Jr. saying that this is fake news. The fake news reports in the UK are just as dishonest and full of as the ones here in America. Cammy Badenoch calling it fake news. Heads must roll. And Suella Braverman earlier on in the show in the studio in Westminster saying the BBC licence fee should be scrapped.
Look, I'm not a fan of any sort of particular one broadcasting, but I see every broadcaster having their own politics and proving to show their own narrative and rhetoric and sometimes even propaganda. And certain things will be put forward.
That's okay, idiot. But we are forced to pay for it. So GB News taking a stance, that's okay. People choose to pay a subscription. The BBC, it's forced on taxpayers. They have to pay it. Otherwise, it's criminality. So yes, it's good. It's okay for broadcasters to have their own point of view. I have my own point of view. But the freaking majority of the country aren't forced to pay for it.
If this is something that has been breached, then of course investigations should be made and it will be proven. But I don't think in this particular case is anything different to what, for example, Donald Trump is showing, for example, as to what people have also accused the BBC of being more pro-Israel, not just only pro Hamas, as is claimed in this particular, article or whatever it is. I do see that a lot of the times, majority of, broadcasters will do whatever they can to show the facts, but using their own narrative to put forward whatever reports they want to. They will maximize and minimize, do whatever they, in whichever angle they want to show.
Fahima, you're very eloquently there defending the BBC's right to paint a picture. Let me paint a picture for you. Just say GB News decided to make a report, I don't know, about a Muslim scholar. And we used a clip from an hour later where it was him saying, we're going to give them hell. And then it showed a picture of a riot that happened 2 hours before he spoke. And we displayed it that way. Would you seriously be saying, oh, everyone's allowed to tell a story? It's just editorialisation? Of course you wouldn't. You'd be clutching your pearls and screaming blue murder.
It's not just also about the issue of what's edited. It's also how people interpret what they see. We all come from the news with our own filters, political, emotional, cultural. So even two people watching the same clip can walk away believing completely different things. It's not just about the bias and broadcasting. It's about the bias within.
This lady's so dumb, isn't she? She is so freaking dumb.
Ourselves as audience as well. So again, I do feel that editors routinely shorten speeches and link them with relevant imagery to tell a story. That doesn't automatically equal bias unless intent or effect are clearly misleading. And again, that needs to be investigated if it's found to be that way. And I don't think that in any sort of way that every single sort of broadcasters can claim that they have never done anything similar. And like I said, this is very much in line with Donald Trump's rhetoric anyways, with his language, fight like hell, events that follows can fairly lead to journalists to question whether he's contributed to the violence.
Fahima, as a matter of public record, I can confirm that GB News has never done anything like this. Taken a quote an hour later and spliced it together and taken footage from 2 hours before and put it at the end to create a picture, to tell a story. Never, because there are editorial standards and we'd be absolutely fried alive by Ofcom if we did that. But it seems, in your opinion here, nothing to see. It's the BBC.
There's no formal ruling yet, and these are allegations, not confirmed breaches. The BBC may well produce the raw footage and show that edits were within acceptable editorial bounds. And until an independent review concludes otherwise, it's premature to brand this as fake news.
She's an absolute muppet. She is thick as mince. I mean, I know why she's on there, but it still frustrates me because she's thick as mince. At least get someone that's clued up and actually can give a relative point. We spoke just there, right? The BBC is our national broadcast that we're forced to pay for, essentially, with a TV licence. We need to scrap that. But she's saying, oh, it's okay for broadcasters to have their own sort of political view. It's not for that side. If you're being forced to pay for it, it should be completely unbiased. Then she's also talking about, well, it's maybe not doctoring. It may fall into the editorial guidelines. They released this just before the 2024 presidential election, and they knew exactly what they did because they wouldn't have took two parts that were an hour apart of each other to make it look like he was inciting violence, would they? She is really dumb. And does she want to sit there and protect Hugh Edwards as well at some point? Yeah, I probably wouldn't if I were her. It's been an awful day for the mainstream media really as well. Tommy Robinson, of course. Tommy Robinson, of course, exposed the mainstream media. A police officer admitted that he acted unlawfully, and he said, "Why didn't you report that to the mainstream media today?" Of course, he was found not guilty of these sort of terrorism charges. You know, it sounds ridiculous even saying that. But again, the mainstream media, BBC, whether have you be, they just say not guilty, but they don't actually try and clear his name because it's a part of the agenda to try and demonize him. This is Tommy Robinson, of course, confronting him.
About money, you made it about me, you made it about far right.
As I've said, I am here about to report on your not guilty verdict. Why didn't you report one of the single facts that come out today? I actually don't think you know what my reporting included, so I don't think you can accurately accuse me.
I did. I searched the internet. I searched the internet after my trial, and I found that not one person found that, because the police officer admitted he acted unlawfully. The police officer admitted he detained me after 34 seconds. Not one of you reported it. I'm confused. Why not? And I'm frustrated by it, if I'm honest. I'm frustrated by the mainstream media's reporting on this case. Okay, who did you report for?
As I say, I'm going to try and report your not guilty verdict to our audiences, but I cannot do that.
Why didn't you report when you sat in court for 2 days? Why didn't you report what happened in court to your audiences? Why didn't you report what happened in court to you? Why didn't you report the truth of what happened in court? Because all you report, no, you didn't report about cars and money. Why didn't you report about all the stuff the judges found? Because that all happened in court. You didn't report any of it.
You have no accurate information about what my report
Yes, I do. Okay, you didn't include the 34 seconds.
I did.
No, you didn't.
I did.
No, you didn't. Who did you report for?
Look, this is a very intimidating environment that you're putting me in.
Why is it intimidating? I'm asking you questions. This is what I get everywhere I go.
Surrounded
By everyone acting calmly. Of cameras, they're all journalists. The same happens
every time. You have me physically called.
No,
and you're making
Tommy Robinson. Well done, Tommy. Shake my hand, bro.
Thank you.
Yes, God bless you. Good luck, man.
I honestly hate liberal women, and I just hate liberal women and the way they speak. Why do they speak like that? Well, I feel really intimidated around all these reporters. You know, what she wanted to say thugs or something like that. They were journalists, just like her. I feel really intimidated. She's full of shit. The reason why they didn't want to report on it, because they don't want to clear his name. They want to do the bare minimum. They want to get the clicks and use Tommy Robinson's name, because he gets clicks. But they don't want to... They were there, obviously, to try and get the guilty plea, and hopefully it was guilty, and they have a job for that because they want to get the clicks. But then they don't want to clear his name, and they don't want to report that kind of stuff. They just want to go, oh, it's not guilty for this. They have a narrative, a lot of these mainstream media sites, and it's absolutely disgusting to see. And as you can see, Keir Starmer doesn't care. He thinks the BBC are doing a great job. But guys, do let me know your thoughts on that down there in the comment section below. Hit like, hit subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Take care. Peace.